Hey, everybody. Welcome to the inaugural episode of Paw and Order Las Vegas, the animal welfare podcast, where we hope to educate and empower you to take action. We will take a deeper look at the current animal-related stories that are in the media and your social media streams, giving you more insight, our opinions, and interviewing special guests in studio. Today, we will have with us one of the women that tried to save Jazzy the Frenchie, the pup who tragically died from heat here in Las Vegas last week. But first, let's meet our hosts. I've got Gina Greisen here to my left. How you doing, Gina?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. Gina, for those of you who don't know, for over 20 years now, they're just celebrating their 20th anniversary. Gina's been Nevada's leading voice for animals as president of Nevada Voters for Animals. She's very politically active. She's authored numerous laws. The first animal cruelty felony law in the state of Nevada. I think, wasn't Nevada the last state to have
I'm
animal
not sure
cruelty
about
felony?
that, but that was 2011.
Okay.
And it was called Cooney's Law.
Cooney's Law. She's worked on laws to protect animals from extreme heat, hoarding, bestiality. She pressured Metro to train officers in non-lethal ways to deal with dogs instead of, just shooting them. And that's kind of where we first met. I didn't actually meet you, but we went to one of your protests that you had in front of Metro. And some specific memorable cases that people might be aware of. You were the one that tracked down the 164 puppy mill Pomeranians being smuggled in a U-Haul across the California-Nevada border and back and forth. She tipped police off to the recent Boulder City hoarders. She discovered the surveillance video that led to identifying Reba's killers, and many, many other cases, too many to mention here. I know she'd like me to go on, but I'm not going to. Basically, though, if there's an animal abuse issue or law that needs to be passed in Las Vegas, Gina's probably involved in some way. Gina and I, we don't always agree, but I'm proud to say she's a friend and fellow soldier fighting on the front lines for animals. So thank you, Gina. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm sure we'll have plenty of time to discuss.
And congratulations on your 20 years.
Yes, thank you. And actually, that's Friday, June 13th, will be 20 years that Nevada Voters for Animals has been around fighting for animals. And let me introduce my friend, Melanie Shayne. Melanie has been rescuing dogs in the Las Vegas Valley for 10 years. She is the founder of the Doggy Task Force, which she started as a volunteer group in 2019 to help dogs that were running scared during the 4th of July fireworks. The group moved forward to continue their mission year-round and is now a 501c3. In 2020, when the country and the shelter shut down for COVID, there was nowhere to take the dogs being picked up and dumped. So the task force Melanie started Kiss My Paws Rescue, which became a nonprofit in 2021. Melanie has been highly active in animal welfare, news stories, protests, speaking at city and county meetings, and doing whatever necessary to speak for the voiceless. And I know this because I drag her to half those meetings. So
she does. Are you going tomorrow? Are you going tomorrow?
Yeah.
Yes.
I can definitely say us three usually are at all the meetings.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
That,
for the
that
most
we need
part,
to
yeah.
be at. Yeah.
I would say a good 90 to 95%.
Mhm.
Yes. So now I'm going to introduce Mr. Bryce Henderson.
The handsome man in the room.
And I met Bryce through Gina.
Right.
So
we even don't really know each other that well. Not like I know
not
Gina,
really.
but I'm looking forward to getting to know you better in the podcast here.
For sure. And then I do send people to you that I see on Facebook that are looking for rentals or properties that they can rent. Because I know that you're really good with that as far as the dogs, being able to get dogs into properties. So anyways, okay. So you might know Bryce as the president of No Kill Las Vegas, a nonprofit animal advocacy organization that was started back in 2013. His social media pages, Go Vegas Dog, have over 500,000 followers. Wow, that's crazy. Which he uses to educate the community on animal welfare issues. You will catch him on the local news, giving a voice to animals, lobbying various elected officials, or organizing protests to demand change. Thank you, Bryce.
It's almost like I wrote that myself.
Almost like you did.
So what are we doing here? Why did we decide to do a podcast about animal issues in Vegas?
Well, for me, excuse me, it's because I have to slow down a little bit. As maybe some people know or some people don't, I was diagnosed last September with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer that has spread to my bones and my lungs. So I can't be running and jumping fences and being in the trenches as much as I would like anymore. So this is the way that I can try to educate, inform, and organize those who love animals to try to affect change. Because how I do it just has to change up a little bit. And I feel like this is a broader reach. And I know that we've all been talking about this for a while to try to figure out how to, talk about these issues and bring them to the forefront and hopefully, sort of like a union, organize people to get involved.
Right. Because the three of us have been doing it a long time, but we can't do it forever. And there's a few people that are still around from when we started, but it's a lot of new faces, which is great. But we need more new faces out there because animal advocacy, there's a lot of burnout with it. And hopefully we'll find some new leaders out there through the podcast, and we can help educate people on how they can be active in the community.
So for me personally, same. I know that we're probably going to do some sessions where we talk about rescue and what's involved in actually running a rescue, being in a rescue, from volunteering. I think that even though I had my volunteer task force group, I had no idea what it was like to run a rescue until I actually did it. And I was not involved with a rescue per se, where I understood the operations and the comings and goings. And there's a lot more involved in it than people think that there are. Also, as far as education to the public and letting people know that, sometimes we go to these council meetings, we have these protests, and we don't see huge turnouts. And I think that people don't understand that just by commenting on Facebook, that's not doing anything for the animals. So I think the more that we educate with an understanding that the more people that show up to these events, the more that we're pushing the politicians to make these changes and take it seriously.
And I'll say each one of us individually are an example of how just one person can make a difference. So for anyone listening out there, you could be that one person. Our plan is to do these podcasts weekly, and there's so many animal issues in the news every week, and we just felt like there needed to be a forum to discuss all of them, other than social media, where people could learn more about the issues that are happening. And so that's definitely something that we pride ourselves on this podcast, is you'll always be hearing about current issues that are happening in the animal world in Las Vegas. And just as an example of the guest we have today. So anything else anyone wants to add about the podcast or what people can expect? Or
well, and I think it's important to dispel some myths that I think a lot of people for a long time thought that I was like, I don't know, married to some rich guy, or that I don't know, that I don't even know what people thought, that I was some independently wealthy person. I mean, I'm really just I'm just a nobody, right? I'm just a person that got involved and was crazy enough and audacious enough to think that I could change things. I'm not well connected. I don't have wealthy family members. I'm not married. I literally got involved, and and I've made change, and I've been the leading animal advocate in the state for many years. And it wasn't because I married someone, or I have money, or I know people. I just fought really hard, and I relentlessly advocated for animals. And anyone can do this. Right. Anyone, you have the power to do this. And that's what I hope that people take away from this, is that, if you want to make change, contact your elected officials, get involved, and you too can write laws, fight for change, be a change maker, and, and be an effective animal advocate.
That's great. Yep. All right. Well, why don't we talk about some of the issues that have been going on in Nevada and Las Vegas? I would say one of the bigger issues is Reba's law getting passed. It had some moments where it looked like it was dead, and it was brought back to life. What are your guys' thoughts on Reba's law?
Well, Well, first of all, the governor hasn't signed it, so it's not a law. I mean, he can either not sign it and it'll become a law after a certain amount of time, or he can veto it or whatever. We'll see what happens. But for me,
I do believe by the 12th or 13th, if he hasn't signed it, it automatically becomes law.
Right. My issue with Reba's law, while I'm always for passing laws, is that from the get-go, we knew that the district attorney, Steve Wolfson, already wasn't putting anyone in jail really for like 10 minutes. So thinking that he's going to put someone in jail for 10 years to me was, I feel like he sent the animal advocates off on a wild goose chase to distract from the fact that he's not putting anyone in prison and that he's not truly enforcing the current felony animal cruelty law, which is 1 to 4 years for willful and malicious animal cruelty. And then if it's done to threaten, intimidate, or terrorize, such as in a domestic violence situation, it's a Class C felony. There's already laws on the books that he's already not enforcing. So I'm very frustrated because I would have liked to have seen infrastructure put in place to properly investigate cases. I do like the reckless standard, but
What's the reckless standard?
Well, they've added it because right now the standard is willful and malicious to prove that it's felony animal cruelty. That's what separates it from, just a misdemeanor. So now there's this reckless standard that you don't have to prove the willful and malicious. It just has to be like really reckless behavior.
So it's my understanding from the law now, if you abandon your dog at the dog park or in a shopping center or on the street, or you move away and you leave your dog in your house and your dog ends up dying, now you'd be charged with a more severe felony. Is that your understanding?
I say it remains to be seen because as we just saw with what happened to actually Reba's killers, the law is named after Reba. They just, to me, in my humble opinion, gave one of Reba's killers a very sweet plea deal. So, that's
what do you mean a plea deal?
She just got 7 months. She got a plea deal for 7 months, she's actually due to get out of jail, I believe on June 30th. So with time served, she'll be out of jail at the end of this month. I do believe she is going to be probably, the reason they probably gave her a plea deal is because she's probably going to be testifying against her, I don't know if it was her ex-husband, boyfriend, whatever he is.
Where'd you hear that?
I read it. I read it in the paper.
Okay.
And actually, there was a lot of a lot of controversy this week because, and again, I like to attend these hearings and stuff, but lately because of, walking sometimes being an issue for me and just getting around and the pain level that I'm at right now, I can't always attend. And it's a lot of work to get to the courthouse and all that. But I understand that they actually closed the courtroom and it was very controversial. They made everybody leave the courtroom.
Right.
And there were some private negotiations that went on. And they even had to call in Maggie McCletchie, who's the attorney for the Las Vegas Review-Journal, to come in and say, no, this is illegal. There's a way, if they're going to shut the courtroom down, that it has to be done.
Why do you guys think the DA handled it that way?
Because I think she's going to testify against why
do they have to close the court to do that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know if we'll find out or if they, but again, it's frustrating to me that the very law that everybody, that the district attorney sent everybody off, to distract from the fact that he's not already enforcing the law, which I'm going to thank Dana Gentry with the Nevada Current, because we did an investigative report and she looked at a bunch of the cases from the last 2 years, and even some of the most heinous cases got a sweetheart plea deal. They got a slap on the wrist. And now, just like with the hoarders, right? They killed over 80 animals. They were charged with 16 felonies. They dropped that down to 1 felony. And now they were only given 1.5 years probation. And if they successfully complete that, it drops down from a felony to a misdemeanor. And that's many of the cases, that's what's happening.
And so people need to understand that there are laws on the books right now where these people could be getting years in prison.
Yes.
Just with like Reba's killer. Her name is Markeisha Foster. And she could have gotten years in prison.
They both should have gotten 4 years.
She's getting 7 months. So people really need to be upset with the DA and be writing him and certainly not voting for him, because this is a pattern that we continue to see with him.
Yes. Very, very disappointing.
To your point, I think that people should know who they're voting for. And if you are a strong advocate of animals, regardless of the party, you should be educated on who's running, even judges, DAs.
Right. And we try to keep people informed, but it's so difficult. So many
It's
local
so hard.
races.
Well-
but for important things, we always try to call people out.
And that's been happening, with Reba's Law and stuff, that there was some calling out of some of the folks that, weren't allowing the bill to get a hearing in their committees. And that was good to see that some people, but again, a law isn't worth the paper it's written on. I see you have printed out this nice blue, ink on this paper. That's basically a law. So it's not worth the paper it's written on unless it's enforced. And that's like when I authored Cooney's Law, I literally had to get on the phone and call. The first case was in Northern Nevada. I had to call the district attorney up there and say, hey, that's a felony. And they're like, no, it's not. And I'm like, I'll hold while you look it up. And they're like, oh, okay. And then the case down here with the boys that drowned the kittens in the cup, I had to call animal control, the supervisor, and say, that's a felony. I'm going to be pushing for felony charges. He's like, no, it's not. And I'm like, I'll hold while you look that up. And then they were like, oh, you're right. That's what I'm saying is like, it was hard to roll out Cooney's Law. It was hard to get 911 to stop transferring the call when it was a felony in progress to animal control. And yes, they like animal control to respond first. But the fact is, if someone is actively beating their dog to death or stabbing their dog or beating the dog with a baseball bat or something, that's not an animal control call. That is a metro call. That is a lights and sirens respond. That's a felony in progress. And it took a long time to roll that out and educate the operators, the dispatchers. Animal control didn't even have, again, there was just so many issues that happened. We can do a whole thing about how that happened. But again, it's not worth the paper it's written on if you don't enforce it.
Right.
And that's what's happening right now with the current law, is that the district attorney is not enforcing it. And the very person who went up to the legislature, or I don't know if she testified from here, I just forgot her name. She's one of the assistant district attorneys. She was the one that just negotiated the plea deal for Reba's killer, one of Reba's killers, and she negotiated the plea deal for for Carolyn Luke and Timothy Miller.
Wow.
It's like, you say one thing and then you do another. Mm-hmm. So don't tell us that you believe in this and we need stronger laws, but then you don't even enforce them.
Well, I want to bring up one thing in Reba's Law that hasn't been talked about at all, is that now when you see an animal in distress in a car, you're allowed to break the window without breaking the law. It's no longer illegal if you see an animal in distress. Now, of course, that's a judgment call on your point.
I was
on
just
your
going to
part.
say the key words: animals in distress.
So if you break that window, you better be able to make sure and prove that the animal was in distress. But now you can no longer be charged, and the owner cannot come after you civilly for breaking their window as well, which was already in place.
But I also feel like, you need to be careful, because I know there was a situation where, and it was July, and it was an anomaly that the temperature was only about 80 degrees. And this was back in like 2016 when I was fighting cancer the first time. I was at my doctor's office and I walked out. There's a dog in a car, but it was only about 78 degrees, right? Dog was not in distress. And I would call animal control. I was driving around the parking lot waiting, and out walked two very large men. Now, if someone would have gone over and broken the window, these two very large men that own that dog probably would have beat you up, if not worse. So people need to be careful. It is a judgment call. You really
and call
need
911 too.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
That's why I said
that's part of protecting yourself. You called 911, then you broke the window.
Well, I called. I know, but before you can maybe get a response, someone's going to walk out, maybe not understanding what you're doing, because again, people that do this aren't always doing it. They're just ignorant a lot of times. They don't realize what they've done, and they see someone breaking their car window. They're going to walk out and they might beat the crap out of you or worse, right? Mm-hmm. Because they're going to be defending their property, or they're going to think you're stealing their dog.
I think it's also about checking to make sure that the car's not on. So,
yes.
Because I can lock my doors and run into a 7-Eleven, leave my car running with the air on, with the dog in it. So I think it's really looking at the situation before doing something
Just be smart, people.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I get calls
Be
in
reasonable.
January sometimes where people want to break a window. And that's what I'm saying is like, I'm very worried about this because I'm worried about violence. I'm worried about, for me, if I see a dog that's in distress, I'm going to do what I have to do to save the dog. But I can't speak for others. I don't expect other people to be like me.
Well, let's talk more about heat going on right now in Vegas. We're just about to enter summer. What are the rules when it comes to how you take care of your animal when it's hot out?
If it's hot for them, if it's hot for you, it's hot for them. Like you want to be standing outside in 106, 8, 10, 15 degrees all day with the sun beating down on you. What do you think is going to happen? You're going to end up in the hospital.
It's
And
sad.
what is the law?
Well, right now the law is you must provide adequate shelter.
This is the law you helped pass, by the way. So that's why I'm asking you.
Well, hold on. The law already that's already been there is you must protect your animals from the extremes of heat and cold. So you have to provide adequate shelter, shade, water for your pet already. You can't just leave your dog outside on dirt with no shade or shelter from the sun and no water. You're already going to be in trouble. But because it gets so extremely hot here, Lily's Law, which we saw the tragic situation in North Las Vegas a few years back, she was tied out, and basically baked to death because she had knocked over her water, bowls and stuff. And so now what we've done is we've passed Lily's Law across most of Southern Nevada, and Henderson hopefully is about to pass it. If it's 105 out, you must provide additional cooling above and beyond just adequate shelter and shade. So you must provide like a misting system or a kiddie pool or something so that the dog's temperature doesn't exceed 105. Because once that happens, you start having a shutdown of organs, you have heat distress, and that animal's going to perish. And what sucks is it's not illegal to leave your dog outside. There's a lot of people that do that, but as Miss Underwood learned this past week, being charged with a felony, when you leave your dog outside, especially in a cage like her dog, her Frenchie, especially the short-snouted dogs, her dog died, she got arrested, and now she's facing felony animal cruelty charges. So yeah, it's not illegal to leave your dog outside, but if you don't protect them from the heat, you too could get matching bracelets and end up with felony animal cruelty charges and possibly do 1 to 4 years in prison. And if depending on, the new law that just got passed, that might even be additional. I doubt it, with the DA, but there might be even additional time that you're going to spend in prison.
Well, before we bring our guests in here to discuss the Jazzy situation a little more, there's a couple other issues I wanted to touch upon. I know you're investigating an issue right now where an animal was discarded by a dumpster, and animal control's investigating. And it turns out they had another dog, allegedly. Both of these dogs they had gotten from the Animal Foundation. And from what I understand, it was free adoption day. Is that?
Or fee waived.
Fee waived?
I think they were both fee waived, probably free adoptions. We see that a lot.
So we potentially have 2 dead dogs here that came from free adoptions at the Animal Foundation. What are you guys' thoughts on that promotion?
Can I also, I don't know if you're aware as well, but there was actually a 3rd dog.
Really?
And that dog was recently, within the last 2 days, found as a stray.
Taken by the same owners.
Yes, it looks like they were either friends
or family. Yeah.
And I can't really go into anything else because I've recently found out that there might be some other things going on this property. So
I hear they're investigating.
It's a current investigation, and
we'll share more as soon as we.
Correct. Yes.
But I think that's kind of the point, is that we know that there was something bad that happened, and right now, animal control is running priority calls back to back. I know I've heard that there could be hundreds of calls pending. We got the call that the dog had been laying by the dumpster for 2 days. I went out there with our friend Tracy, and we, excuse me, we got animal control out there. because that dog deserved an investigation. We don't know what happened to the dog. We're not alleging anything. Could have just been hit by a car. But we know that the dog had just gone out, foster to adopt 2 weeks prior. So that deserved, that dog deserves an investigation. And that even became a little bit controversial on my page. Like, why would you share this terrible video? Well, because we're demanding an investigation. And now what we have found out is this is expanded into a larger investigation, which is why we say every dog deserves an investigation. So what we ask people to do is when you see something like that, get an activity number, report it to the authorities, and then maybe contact us, reach out to my page or reach out to the Doggy Task Force and say, hey, we need help with this because we can bring some attention and ensure that the authorities get out there and conduct a proper investigation. Now, they did come out, they did show up, and now what we need to do, because there's been a lot of sharing, is that we need to allow the authorities now to do the investigation.
Right, so, I agree, but sometimes the authorities need to be encouraged to investigate. And if they slow down,
and they came out.
We need to post about it and let people know, because there's nothing that encourages investigations more than people calling up and demanding it.
And that's fine,
getting on
but
the news.
People are releasing information that I feel can sometimes possibly jeopardize an investigation, like the picture of the guy who adopted the second dog that was deceased. We don't know what the circumstances are. We were assured it's under investigation, but maybe, because this just happened with the license plates, that the people maybe saw the post. We don't want to tip these people off that you're under investigation, that we know that the dog is dead and you're under investigation. So sharing that information sometimes could jeopardize the investigation that the authorities are doing. So that's what we just ask people to be mindful.
Sure. I would hope they've already interviewed these people, though. So
but
they should already know.
We don't know if they have.
We don't know for sure. But if they're doing their job, they should have. I don't know what else they'd be investigating. That's where I would start. Well, let's go interview these people who got the dogs from the Animal Foundation.
Sometimes they're not there. Sometimes they don't answer the door. Sometimes they're getting a warrant. And sometimes that takes time. And I can just pop off right now in a couple of different situations where people were sharing information and sharing addresses. And the fact is a warrant was already drafted. There was going to be the dog was going to be seized the next morning. And people were there the night before calling Metro, going out there, threatening the people. And in a situation like that, the dog could be disappeared.
Let's look at Reba's case. Reba's case, did you think they skipped town for a little while? Because I know it seemed like they had trouble finding them. Because I know you had contact with them way before the police had, right? The owners, the two people that killed Reba.
No, I didn't have contact with them. I had contact
with a neighbor.
With the neighbors that were witnesses and actually testified before the grand jury, which there'll be more coming out now that the case is being adjudicated, because I have some, we've talked about this. There's some opinions that happen with that case that, if you want to get into it, I'm glad to get into it right now. But like Reba, like the case of Reba, that night, the bucket was there. They're claiming that, and we met with the sheriff. Melanie and I went. They admitted mistakes were made because
What do you mean the bucket?
The bucket Reba was in is a huge piece of evidence. Mm-hmm. Everyone kept saying, "Where's the bin?" There's probably fingerprints on the tape. And no one knew, it was like, mum is the word. No one knew where the bucket was. You want to know why? Because we believe that it was never gathered as evidence. That was a crucial piece of evidence in that case. So we, asked the sheriff about it, and they admitted. They just said, well, mistakes were made. And then literally a week later, you had someone from Metro going out there saying, well, the evidence was destroyed. Well, that's weird, because we have the video that shows Metro there with the bucket there. What did you do with it? You destroyed the evidence, So just, be honest. But this is our issue, is that it's so crucial at the beginning of an investigation to properly, gather the evidence.
Right. And I don't always trust Metro or whoever's investigating it. And so I understand waiting if there's an investigation. I understand that argument. But I like to get it out there in the public as soon as possible so more people can share it and talk about it. And you can generate leads that way. That's my feeling, at least. Before we bring our guest,
I want to backtrack just really quick. So with Canella, the dog behind the dumpster, I think what is important to mention as well is that at initial glance, when Tracy went out, it didn't look like she got hit by a car or got out and got hit by a car. Now, obviously, we're not vets. We don't, do that kind of thing. But there was really no evidence that she got hit by a car. And I think that's where this is even more important, where normally maybe animal control would just pick up the dog and take it to the shelter and call it a day. If they weren't there pressing for an investigation because the situation looked weird, didn't really make sense. Tried to get video footage from the stores right there, the neighbors across the street. It might not have escalated to maybe where it is right now, where it's turning into an investigation.
No, I'm
we need to
thankful that you
yes.
demanded the investigation.
And there's this chain of custody with evidence. There was someone that had already moved the dog. The dog was there. And then we had another group that showed up and wanted to move the dog's body and take the dog to the shelter. And that's what we try to say is, please don't do that. You're tampering now with the evidence in an investigation. We can't have that. And for me, I know, just like when we look back at Maura's, case and, what happened with hers, a lot of people don't understand. If you're going to have an investigation, you have to have a cause of death. What we need is a necropsy on the dog. Don't tamper with the evidence, because once you remove the dog from the scene and it's gone, now they can say, oh, well, maybe you're the one that beat the dog or shot the dog or hurt the, you can't tamper with the evidence.
Sure.
Leave the evidence there.
And that, Gina, that happens a lot.
It does.
Dog left in an apartment, and then people want to be the hero. They go get the dog out of the apartment, and it's like, you just remove the evidence. So what now is going to happen?
Had that happen on
what now is going to happen to them?
On the 5 dogs that we help, because now it's like, well, you guys
they weren't dead though.
No, they weren't dead, but then it's like, well, you guys didn't have the warrant, or you didn't. The fact is that
Who was saying that?
Well, this like.
Okay.
The authorities, that we, but the bottom line is that we had, an apartment full of dogs. And again, this is the hard thing, is that animal control was aware. They hadn't shown up for hours. The dogs were about to be left overnight. They had no food, no water. The apartment it was disgusting. And in that situation, we ended up rescuing the dogs out of the apartment. And thank God for Nevada SPCA coming in and the apartment manager for allowing us access, and in that situation. But then I was told that, that negated the investigation because of this or that. And that's what I'm saying is, it's not always easy. There's not always a cut and dry, because, for instance, if you see a dog with no water, right? And you call animal control. What happens? Neighbors give the dog water, they give the dog food, and now animal control rolls up and goes, oh, nothing to see here. The dog has food and water. That's why you have to properly document if, especially in the heat, we don't want the dog to die, but we also don't want you to give the dog food and water, because now animal control just showed up and into their eyes, the dog has food and water that you were alleging it didn't have.
Right.
So people need to be very careful.
Yeah.
And if you're going to give a dog food or water that that you believe has been abandoned or something, you have to document yourself doing it and what the situation was before you changed things.
All right, let's talk about puppy stores. It's just for a few minutes here. A lot of people were aware that the state was going to pass a law to ban all the puppy stores in the state of Nevada. Would join Clark County, Reno, North Las Vegas, and we would get them out of the entire state. And if you don't know, puppy stores source their puppies from puppy mills. We can get into all that later. Anyway, the bill was killed after it passed the assembly with bipartisan support. And after it was killed, I was in touch with the organization that was pushing the bill in the state. And they had told me that they had already spoken with Mayor Berkeley in the city of Las Vegas, and they were going to pass a ban in the city of Vegas. This is 2 weeks ago, maybe, or right after the bill was killed. Now I've heard from 2 separate sources that they're just going to do a moratorium. And the 13 puppy stores that are here, they're going to allow to stay. Hasn't been verified yet, but I have 2 very good sources who've told me this. And if it's true, Mayor Berkeley is once again letting down the animals of Las Vegas. So we will have to see what materializes, but I wanted to give everybody that information of what I'm hearing at this point, because we need to stay on top of this, and we need to push for the mayor to ban all of the puppy stores in Las Vegas.
Did she give you a reason why? Like, why?
Who?
Like, knowing what's going on in the country right now with the overpopulation and the shelters being full, like, why would she allow puppy stores to stay in the city.
The mayor?
Yeah.
Well, she hasn't said
she give you a
anything
reason?
publicly about this.
Okay.
What she had originally had told this organization is she would support the ban. But now we're hearing from 2 other people that she's not going to.
Hmm.
So
Remember,
we'll have to
that's
see
who you
what
voted
happens.
for.
Yes. It's not me.
Not me. I'm not in city limits.
Well, I don't live in the city, but
Before we move on really quick, I just want to
Yeah.
clarify something. So we were talking on the phone about this the other day. When I first met Gina and I was talking on the phone to her, and I don't even remember the situation, quite frankly, but she's like, well, what jurisdiction are you in? And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm in Las Vegas. She's like, well, no, what jurisdiction are you in? I'm like, what do you mean? I'm in Las Vegas. Like, I was getting irritated with her. She's like, where are you, in city, Henderson, North, county? And I'm like, I don't know. It says Las Vegas on my address. I'm in Las Vegas. Come to find out, I'm in county. I'm in county limits. And she's like, well, who's your representative? I'm like, I don't know. So I think educating yourself on what jurisdiction you live in is super important, because the laws, as some of you might know, are different between all four jurisdictions in this city. I mean, in Las Vegas. So between Henderson, North, city, and county, they're all different. So I remember when the city of Las Vegas increased the limit to 6 dogs. And so everyone thought that they could have 6 dogs since they live in Las Vegas. No, you can't have 6 dogs unless you get a permit. Where in the city, you can have 6 dogs without having a permit. So without knowing what jurisdiction you live in and knowing the laws, it makes it difficult. So I just urge everybody to know where you live and know who your representative is, because if you need to write a letter or an email about whatever law or situation in regards to animal welfare, you need to know who you're writing your letter to, because they oversee your jurisdiction.
Yeah. Or what laws apply
area.
to you.
Or what laws apply to you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because it is, like even my address, I live in unincorporated Clark County, but my address says Las Vegas, and I think people get confused. They're like, well, I live in Las Vegas. Well, okay, but do you live in the city proper, or do you live in unincorporated Clark County?
Your mailman doesn't count. He doesn't tell you where you live.
Yeah. So that is a very important point. Thank you for bringing
so
that
we've
up.
already touched on the issue with Jazzy a little bit. I'm sure everybody's seen the video already. I received it last Saturday and couldn't believe it. I'd never seen anything like that. We've seen dogs that have died in the heat before. We've never actually really seen it on camera, and then see the owner come out and be confronted with it. And so let's bring in our guest here, Marisela Bautista, who was one of the women in the video who went in the backyard to try to save Jazzy. Hi, Marisela. Thanks for coming in and into the studio and talking about your experience. Why don't you tell us a little bit how you got involved in this situation and kind of what happened to you?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me here. I think in the beginning I was sleeping, and one of my neighbors came to call me, and she called me, and I'm a heavy sleeper, so then she knocked on my door. We're very close neighbors. She knows that I have my dogs and her dogs. So she had told me briefly, she was shaking first. And so I was like, what's going on? She said, I know you used to rescue dogs in the past. And there's a dog, it's outside. And I was concerned. So I got my shoes. I was just in my pajamas. I had put my dogs in the kennel. And I went to go tend to see what happened. As I saw, there was a little dog in distress. Also, just panting, and I wasn't sure of any details at the moment, but she did mention that she called animal control and 911. And
when you say distress, like, can you describe it?
I would say she was panting. I also saw no water. The bowls were topped over. No form of mesh on the metal cage. It's like a crate. She was
in the direct sun, right?
And in the direct sun, which was my biggest concern, because it was about maybe 1:00, and they had already called animal control, and no one was showing up. So I told her, we're going to call 911 now. And I urged. I said, I kind of emphasized that it was more because one of the neighbors said that there was more that happened, but I wasn't aware of what happened. I just was wanting to save this little dog. And I went to call and I kept going back to check. And then I went to go check back on my dogs. I let them out because when I wake up, I kind of tend to my dogs the first thing. So as I went back to my house, I invited my neighbor in. We got a glass of cold water because it was so hot outside. When we went back, the dog had collapsed.
Mm-hmm.
And
so you went to get the dog water.
No. So we went to go get water. Yeah. And when we went back, the dog had collapsed.
You went to get water for you or for the dog?
For me and the dog. Yeah. We had 3 bottles of water, one for me, Cece, and the dog. But we were unsure how to get inside. So that's when we went, we saw the dog collapse and I was banging on not the door, but because I couldn't see the dog from the door. It was too high up. So I'm the front neighbor. So 2 of the neighbors before me, they live on the side so they can see the dog clearer. I kind of see the front face of the neighbor. And so if I go to the side, I'm not tall enough. So we go on top of a rock and we can briefly see. And the other neighbor from the other side can see more. So they had given us more information that the dog was outside more time. But I wasn't sure if the owner had come out and let her out, or what had happened. I didn't know any of the details. I just saw the dog and a third. Sorry.
At that point, you decided to go in the backyard, or how did that?
So at that point, when the dog collapsed, I was about to jump, but I have spine issues and a lot of pain, so I was trying to figure out how to get back there. I was gonna go back and get a ladder, but I just was like, I don't know. And one of the neighbors came out, and I think in the shock of everything, I didn't realize there was no lock on the gate, which I think got me a little more upset. Because I didn't see it at that moment. But one of the neighbors was like, well, it's unlocked. And I said, whoa. And I'm like, let's go in. And we all went in at that moment. And we took, I opened the kennel and I tried to take the dog out. My neighbor was more emotional. So she went to try to rub Jazzy's body. And we poured the water on her. And sorry.
That's all right. We're getting teary-eyed too.
It was a very hard experience. I had never had that experience before. I have 3 dogs of my own. My neighbors have 3 dogs, and we were very close-knit neighbors. I think my first reaction was like, I know this is wrong. I've rescued dogs before. I think that time I took away to help myself and my health to heal. I think I couldn't see it going on anymore, so I blocked it out. And I was developing a lot of fear. And so that moment, I think, caused me to break out that fear. And I was able to just say, this, I need to do something. I can't just live in the fear of, what if I don't save this dog? What if I can save this dog? And I think the moments where I couldn't save the dogs kind of affected me more emotionally. So I had to take a step back. But in my faith, I feel like this moment helped me give me the courage and find ways to find more knowledge on the laws and what I can do and what I can't do, or how I can be more supportive in saving future pets that are in distress.
Now, go ahead.
I have a question. So do you know this neighbor? I know that in the video she mentioned something about I just moved in or something. Have you had any previous interactions with her? How long do you know how long she's lived there?
So I've been in the neighborhood for more than 10 years. I've owned, and my neighbors were all closely knit. So we do have 2 houses that are rentals. And so we have neighbors come in and out of these rentals. And, if you look in the record, most of the time it's not good. experience for our established neighbors. There have been SWAT teams called on one of the neighbors. There's been gunshots.
Not that neighbor.
Not that neighbor. That neighbor had moved in about a month ago. I did have, a slight encounter with her. I always welcome my neighbors. Hi, I'm Marisela. She introduced herself. I'm Olivia. And I did feel a little vibe off, but I never go on the vibes because, I'm such an overthinker. So I'm like, no, I have a good experience with her. I'm just going to wait and just establish what I do with my neighbors. But I had a brief encounter. And I did hear other neighbors had other encounters, which were not quite positive as far as certain things that happened. They saw outside of the house, her temper. So, yes, I think that.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Go ahead.
After I posted the video, I was really surprised at how many people were just as angry at the people who had come to Jazzy's rescue as they were the owner who had left them outside. And so I wanted to give you a chance to respond to that. To those people, what would you tell them?
So I have I was there and I have so many I should have, I could have, maybe if I did this. So I have all of that on top of me. But I know I did get there right when it happened and I didn't know any of the details. And so I can't carry that on top of myself, but also like other neighbors, I used to rescue animals. I know for a fact, I'm like, okay, I got to go in there as soon as possible. Some neighbors might not know or may be knowledgeable on certain things, certain laws, or even what people might think about them. Considering this neighbor actually had the courage to call or speak up, and she's still getting people that are upset at her is very concerning. I understand that not everyone is the same. Some people are more fearful like me. I was once courageous, then I got fearful, and I'm going back to courageous. So we all have these seasons that sometimes we don't have the courage to speak up, which is why I'm speaking up. My neighbor might not have the courage, but I have the courage for her. And the fact that she started that movement and saying, hey, something's wrong. I need to document this because if there's no proof, it's very hard to bring justice.
And the way I feel is that it's really easy after we know Jazzy died. Oh, I would have done something. Mm-hmm. But in the moment, did everyone really think Jazzy was going to die? I would imagine people think, well, she's going to be okay, because most of the times you see dogs, they're not dying right in front of you. And so, and let's not forget the fact it's illegal to go into people's yards. And if you go into someone's yard and start messing with their pet and the owner comes out and says, my dog's perfectly fine. They have a gun. They call the cops on you now. So, and I wish people would focus their attention more or their energy or their anger on the person who's responsible for all of this, not the people who were there and are getting collateral damage, who weren't sure what to do or trying to help, doing more than some people. I know most people would just close the window or yell at the dog to shut up or something. So, I mean, I take your side on this, and even the woman that videotaped it, would I have acted differently? I think so. But let's focus our energy on the person who's really responsible. I don't know how you two feel about that, but
I tend to agree. I do. I have a question. Because I know you got there at the end of everything and kind of thrown in and was scrambling to try to figure everything out. Do you know if she had tried to knock on the door, like bang on the door, bang on windows?
I don't know what she had attempted to. I know that when I found Jazzy, I was banging, and it took a while for the owner to come in or to come out.
Banging where?
The back door on the window. I did see kids peek. I just wasn't sure if there was someone inside. But she eventually came out. She was wet, like her hair was wet. She was in pajamas. So she had said that she fell asleep and then she took a bath. And so I don't know what the prior attempts were. I do know the only thing that they did was animal control. And then I think twice they called. And then when they told me, I called 911, and then they transferred me to animal control.
You had a question, Gina? What?
I'm just going to give my opinion. My opinion is, if it, and I don't expect people to be me, and I definitely want to be clear that ultimately the owner's responsible. But I feel like the owner already failed the dog by leaving her out there, which we ended up finding out was the night before she was out there. That dog was out there for hours. And I see it almost like a baby in a car. Do people just go, well, I called the authorities. I'm just going to let this baby, that dog is like a baby in a car. And I would hope that, I would have pounded down that front door. Mm-hmm. And again, I know not everyone's like me. I know, and I guess the frustration that I felt was that everyone was willing to jump in the backyard after the dog was dead. And then my thing was, and I've said this.
Well, because now it's real. Now you know.
No. Let me finish.
The severity.
Is that you already answered my question that I had, that I told you I was going to ask. Isn't this playing over and over in your mind that I wish I would have done it? I said, because that's the thing is, it doesn't even matter what the law says. Mm-hmm. What matters is, what can you live with? And I already knew how you were going to feel. And that's that I wish I would have done more. If only that you're going to replay it over and over in your mind saying, but again, I don't even, like, you came in at the tail end, so it's not even you. But we could tell by the video, because initially when it was posted, I was frustrated when it was like, oh, this is only 10 minutes. No, it wasn't. There was hours. That dog was there from the night before to in the shade, to in the direct sun. And I just kind of feel like if that was a baby in a hot car, would everyone have just said, well, I called, no, they would have broken the window and saved the baby. And that's, for me as an advocate, is that I would hope that, that someone would,
I would hope so too,
more.
But I honestly don't think most people would. And that's why I think we should focus the attention on the offender, the person who created all of this.
And I hope that people do, now that we know that she's had multiple run-ins. That's why I said, ultimately, it's the owner's responsibility. But she didn't even care. She left the dog out there all night and then had done this multiple times.
What were your thoughts after you found out the dog had been out for 20 hours?
Okay, so to be honest, I absolutely agree with you.
Thank you.
I absolutely agree. I feel like everyone should have the courage to be like, you know what, I'm going to do this, and it doesn't matter. I think at times, I do have that shoulda, couldas, and then I see a lot of things that unraveled. There were little things that I saw as far as when she came out, she was not happy. I didn't start recording. I didn't think about recording at all. I just wanted to see how I can save this baby. I started recording when she started yelling at us. Look, even thinking of her yelling at me, I've never seen that side. She was very kind to me. I saw two people, a nice side when she introduced herself, and when she came out and her dog was dead, she was yelling at me. I can't imagine what she would do to me if her dog was alive. Would she come out with a gun? I don't know.
Yeah. No, and that's danger. And we try to tell people, be mindful of that. Yes. And again, I don't expect people to be, but, and that is definitely a concern, that when we tell people that each situation is different. There was, like with Lily, people were like, why did the lady not jump in the backyard? Well, what they don't know is it was a 25-foot fence,
Gina, tell me you haven't gotten any phone calls recently from people saying, my neighbor's keeping their dog out all day. It doesn't have water. You get these phone calls, right?
All day, every day.
But we can't run over there and jump in the backyard and steal the dog. Well, if we did that every time we got that phone call.
But it's just like the dog next to the dumpster for 2 days. I guess that's what, for 20 years, that's what makes me the leading advocate, is I don't stand by. I go make things happen. My hashtag is BGSD. Bitches get shit done. That's been my...
Thank you for swearing, but we like to swear, all three of us.
But that's the difference, right?
You have to be very stern.
But I don't expect everyone to be like me, which is why we're trying to actually find solutions between...
But I think, too, there's a fine line, but it's also very gray. You know what I mean? Like, remember with the pug situation from a few years ago when I went out, but the white dog was still in their yard. not deceased. The pug was deceased.
Yeah, but that's
I
because
had to
he
wait for
a short
animal
snout.
control to get there. I mean, I couldn't get onto their property because it was gated, but could I have gone onto their property? And what would have happened if the dog would have collapsed, in between me waiting for animal control? And then I would have been like, oh my God, I could have gotten this dog and just hopped the fence and said, forget it. So I think, and I have hopped fences and I have
but few
got
people
dogs,
have.
and I have done these things, but at the same time, again, we want these people to be held accountable. So if I hop the fence, get this dog that's not deceased, or do I wait? So I think it can be a very what do I do situation.
I think everyone would
sometimes.
agree in this situation. Someone should have knocked on the neighbor's door,
For
front
sure.
door, right?
Yes.
Not pounded.
Mhm.
Pounded on her door. And even if, that's what I'm saying is like, and everyone's different. And that's why I don't expect people to be like me, but at least in situations like I would have not for me, and this is how I do like with drunk drivers. I don't just call and be like, there's a drunk driver and they're like, thank you, ma'am, for reporting that. And I go, oh no, I'm not hanging up until you catch, and I'm not even kidding you. I've got busted 5 drunk drivers that way. I don't let them hang up with me. I say, no, I'm going to follow them and you're going to stay on the phone with me until you catch them. And I literally have had 5 drunk drivers arrested like that because again, I know I'm the exception to the rule, but I don't, that's just how I do things, which is why we're trying to set things up to say, look, report it, get an activity number. And then I've put out, I do it all the time. Send me a text message. I'll do my best to respond. I literally live 10 minutes away. If only, and again, you came in at the end, so I don't, you just woke up and, it's not really your fault.
But you have to be feeling it still because people read the comments.
Absolutely. I even, I feel for my neighbors too. And I feel that there's always different aspects. You never know someone's legal status. They might not want to get involved because maybe they're not legal. I'm thinking at different things why people.
And I already thought of that.
Yeah,
that's
and
why. Yeah.
Also, I had heard from a neighbor that Miss Underwood had threatened to bring her lawyers in because we entered. So
she might.
Yeah. So it's just these things that it's a lot of people are like, yes, charge me, bring the lawyers. But a lot of people don't know how to process that. That might even destroy them. So in a different perspective, I absolutely agree with you. There have to be more people that are like, yes, we're going to do this and make it happen. Because I think your confidence brings, it's contagious to others. Like, oh, hey, she's doing it. Okay, I'm going to do it too. There has to be a movement that started.
There does, but I think people need to understand repercussions or potential repercussions of their actions. Like you can't be a vigilante, you can't pop off and do things that, are crazy at the same time. You still have to, and that's one thing that I have learned with working from Gina over the last few years is like, wait a minute, let's assess the situation before we just become a vigilante.
Mm-hmm.
And we put pressure on the authorities to do their job.
Correct.
That's what, my role has been many years, and I work a lot behind the scenes, is we put pressure on our elected officials to make things, to push it to happen. But yes, I will say that woman, absolutely, we need to push for justice for Jazzy. But one thing I disagree with wholeheartedly, and I hope you both will agree with me, people were posting her address, her phone number, her workplace, her, that I don't agree with. You should never, ever, ever, because not only is it dangerous, it is illegal. That's doxing. And there was absolutely no reason to be posting the address. And I respect Melanie, and I even called her and she's like, wow, you must have been reading my mind. She had the video. She's one of the first people to post it because I shared it off of her, waited for her to post it. And she took the time to edit out the address when she was calling. That's what you do. Because when you post that address, you are inviting that little kids live there. Mm-hmm. They are not responsible for their mother's horrific actions. And they should not be put in any, situation where they could be harassed or bullied or anything like that. That is wrong. It shouldn't happen. What we need to do is put the pressure where it needs to be, which is like I've been saying from the beginning, the authorities and also the district attorney to fully prosecute this case, especially considering the history that she's had with animal control.
Well, and I think too, when you post that address, you're also now outing them. Like, so we know that it was a neighbor to the right or to the left. So now are there going to be crazy people knocking on your neighbor's door and saying, why didn't you, jump the fence earlier? I mean, you're putting everybody at risk, not only potentially the people that live in the house where it happened, but the neighbors surrounding. Like, weird people driving by, egging the house, knocking on doors. Like, who needs that kind of
there
stuff?
There is absolutely no use of posting the address.
Marisela, is there anything else you would like? Oh, I'm curious, has anyone had contact with her family, any of the neighbors, since this happened?
Oh, yes, I actually had contact. I was the only one that really introduced myself. I try to welcome everybody. I had contact with her afterwards. Everything happened. We did have a extensive conversation with many details.
Mm-hmm.
After Jazzy died?
Can you share some of that?
Wow.
Yes,
I have an open heart.
I do. I claim myself to be a Christian. So I claim that because it saved my life. So I try to follow in those steps daily, even regardless of the anger I carry, because I do have a lot of anger still. But I did have an encounter with her afterward. That's how I found out she took a shower afterwards. And then she was telling me that...
This was the day after?
That same day. And then also
Before the police arrived?
Before, yes.
Okay.
And also I had a conversation with her grandma and great-grandma after the fact also, regards to threats that were happening.
And what did they say to you?
They came up to me and they said that they expressed themselves and said that... blamed us.
Really?
Yeah. She said that she was very angry that the videos were out and that they're getting threats and that we as neighbors should have helped her. I did provide my number to Miss Underwood before, and she never texted me. I always give my numbers to my neighbors. I just feel like that is just who I am, and that's what I've been taught with my relationship with God. I'm really sad that she didn't text me. I just feel like, because when I spoke to her afterwards, she was very emotional, shaking. She was feeling very guilty, blaming herself, but also making a lot of excuses. Many, many excuses, which I think brought me anger. She said that she feels like everyone's going to not blame her, never forgive her. She wanted to be close to the neighbors. Now that's not going to happen. I understand all of these things, but I feel like I love my dog so much, and I don't have children. So if my dog had died and I had experienced that, I can't even think about anything except my dog. And I would want to hold my dog. And so I was very concerned as to these excuses. But I did show her grace because I myself have lost 2 pets. Not in that certain way, but I know how it feels. And so I had just shown her equality. I don't know how they say it in English, but equality. So she was not so emotional. And as much as I want to forgive her, I know that the first step in trying to forgive is to say it out loud. And I gave her a hug and I said, I forgive you. Only God can judge you. She was just so much, oh my gosh, this and this and this. I'm going to jail. I didn't mean to. This is my son's dog. A couple of things that didn't really make sense was she said that the dog has seizures, but I got me upset because why is the dog outside? I have seizures. I can't even go outside for more than 2 hours in Las Vegas. I have my ice packs every day.
Well, I think like what also probably frustrated a lot of people watching these videos is she was not taking accountability, making excuses. Like, I would have ran over to my dog. I mean, obviously my dog would not be in that situation, but I would have ran over to my dog. To me, it appeared as if the neighbor cared more about the dog. Like, when I saw the video, which is not one of the videos that I posted because I felt like it was too upsetting, but it was the aerial view of your neighbor like shaking the dog. And I was on the phone with you and I said, hold on a second. And I just got hysterical because your neighbor seemed to care more about this dog than she did. And all she did was sit there and make excuses. Oh, I was asleep. Oh, I work. Nobody understands my life. We don't need to understand your life. You left the dog outside for over 24 hours? 20 hours in a crate. And then it's a Frenchie on top of it. So it's the bronchial.
They don't
the short-snouted.
The short-snouted dog. So on top of it, so, there was no concern for the dog. She didn't once go over to the dog. So
I have to say, I think that it was a highly volatile, emotionally charged moment. I don't know how any of us would react in that moment. I would go to my dog too, but it's hard to say in that moment that there's a bunch of people screaming and crying and your dog is dead and you're pretty much a piece of crap, right? So it's hard to say how anyone would react, but at the end of the day, you can't unring this bell. What's happened has happened. I hope that Jazzy doesn't die in vain, that we fight for justice. And then we also educate the public on how maybe, like you were saying, like it could be a tiny bit more courageous or, find us, I relive it too, because I'm like, I was 10 minutes away. I'm 10 minutes away. If only they would have called me, or texted me, or if we could have found out, we could have avoided this. But let's not let her death be in vain.
Yeah.
Let's fight for justice. And let's also educate the public. We're working on a project right now. In fact, we have a meeting tomorrow where hopefully we could try to provide a little bit of, some in between the authorities being, too busy and short-staffed and volunteers possibly being able to go out and maybe providing a little bit of life-saving intervention in some cases.
And hopefully Jazzy's story will help the owners out there that are still leaving their pets outside. And it sends a stern message to these people that if you aren't treating your dog humanely, that this could happen to your dog and you as well. So I really appreciate you having the courage to come in and share the story with us.
And I know we need to wrap up, but I just want to say, just last night, a guy was arrested in North Las Vegas for leaving his dogs in his vehicle. So it is something that we're constantly trying to educate the public about. And education and information.
And Jazzy's story went national. It was on news stations in Florida, in California, and New York.
Wow. And I want to thank attorney Eric Roy, because when I called him and I said,
is he sponsoring us?
Well, I'm going to definitely ask. No, but he's already doing a billboard.
We can talk about that on the next one.
He's already doing a billboard. He's working with us on another project.
Yes,
but
I've
he's
met him,
already updated his billboards to say, bring your pets inside.
Great.
Yeah.
And I think really quick, I believe her court date, unless it changes, which it could, is July 2nd, correct? So I think that's going to be a good opportunity for all of you that were commenting on all of these posts to come
down there
and stand there with us and protest, to push the district attorney to file charges, to support the law and do what needs to be done to hold her accountable for what she did.
Would you feel comfortable joining us, Marisela?
Absolutely.
Great.
Nice.
Thank you for coming today. And
yes, thank you very much. And we're going to wrap up. This is the first ever episode of Paw and Order Las Vegas. And as I told the ladies when we started, this will be the worst one. So they're only going to get better. If you made it this far, I know we have you as a super fan now, because the next one will be a lot better. Although, I mean, Marisela, your interview was very touching. And
very. Thank you for coming. And thank you for being, and thank you for showing grace to her, because all of us need that a little bit. It doesn't mean we don't want her held accountable, but it definitely, I appreciate that you did that.
And if you want to find out more about Nevada Voters for Animals or make a donation, where do people do that?
We're on Facebook. That we have a website, Nevada Voters, spelled out, NevadaVotersForAnimals.org. And we can always, I'm a 501c4. So because I lobby for laws, donations are not tax deductible, but we appreciate all donations.
KissMyPawsRescue.org.
Always taking donations?
Always.
All right.
So we can save more dogs.
You can follow me on Instagram and Facebook, Go Vegas Dog. I really don't take donations. I'd rather have you give it to a rescue. But you can buy a house from me.
I was just going to say, but he wants your business.
business.
Yeah, if you're looking to buy or sell a house, I'm happy to help you with that. And that helps support me so that I have the free time to do this. So thank you, everybody, for listening. And we'll see you in a week, hopefully.